Shalom Lukulam. Hello, everybody. I apologize for the late start. We had a few technical problems, but we are happy to be with you and to begin. My name is Paul Gross. I'm a senior fellow at the Menachem Heritage Center in Jerusalem. It's my great pleasure to be with you here, continuing the series that we are doing with the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. This is the fourth episode in that series, and today we'll be discussing the very important topic of the relationship between the United States and Israel, Israel's most important international relationship by some distance, and a crucial pillar of Israel's security doctrine. We are delighted to have with us Professor Eytan Gilboa, an expert on US-Israel relations, international communication and public diplomacy. He was the founding head of the School of Communication and the Center for International Communication at Bar-Ilan University. He's also been a senior fellow at the USC Center on Public Diplomacy and was a senior research associate at the Besser Center for Strategic Studies. He has an MA and a PhD from Harvard. He's been a visiting professor at many top universities in the United States and Europe. He has a very, very long CV, which I'm not going to go through because we're already running late and I really want to get into the content of the conversation, but take my word for it, he has a very impressive bio. Professor Gilboa, thank you for joining us. Apologies for the late start. Let's start with this. Now, when we initially had this, when we initially started this series, or planned this series, I should say, the US-Israel relationship was an important topic because it's always an important topic. But now we're having this conversation in the wake of the events of October 7th, and suddenly it's a very different question because we're dealing with the aftermath of October 7th and President Biden's really extraordinary demonstration of support, both in his public statements and his military support or offer of military support, and the very visible support of the two aircraft carriers, into the Mediterranean. Nevertheless, there is a background of some tension between the White House and the present Israeli government going back from before October 7th, in the midst of the judicial reform protests and everything else. So perhaps you could just give us, as a starter, your assessment of where things stand in the US-Israel relationship today.
Yes, I think you are quite right. We have to distinguish among different phases of the war. Until the humanitarian pause, we've had the war. Now we are in a humanitarian pause, not a ceasefire, humanitarian pause. Israel says it would resume a full-scale war after these humanitarian pause ends, and Israel could get as many hostages back as possible. There is still much agreement about the goal. The goal is to remove Hamas from Gaza, to free Gaza of Hamas. There's much consensus about it. Even in the Arab world, everybody wants to see Israel liquidating Hamas's military and governmental power. There are some disagreements about the humanitarian pause and perhaps also about the day after. The humanitarian pause, so the United States is telling Israel time and again that they would like to see as much as humanitarian assistance as possible. They are concerned about the concentration of about less than 2 million people in a very narrow area in southern Gaza, and this has been an American military doctrine since the global war on terror. Keep humanitarian assistance as wide as possible to enable a military operation as strong as possible.
Professor Gilboa, sorry to interrupt. there's a problem with your video. We can hear you fine, but we can't see you.
Okay. I don't know. We have too many difficulties these days.
Yeah, we had a few difficulties. It may be
let me see
that we'll have to continue like this, but let's see.
No. Let us try again. Okay, just a second. I'll turn it off and I'll start it again.
Okay.
Because we are using our.
And now we can see you. Now we can see you.
Really?
Yeah.
So I'm simply brought it closer. So okay, I'm not responsible for my picture because I cannot see myself. So
okay, well, you look fine, but we can. The most important thing is we can see you.
Okay, so and now you can see me.
Yeah.
So this is strange. Okay, so I would like to continue by saying that. The United States would like Israel to continue with the humanitarian assistance. This sounds a little bit absurd because Israel is required or demanded to provide humanitarian assistance to Gaza without any reciprocal demands from Hamas to offer humanitarian concessions. But the answer is very simple. Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, couldn't care less about Gazans. From his perspective, all the Gazans could die. He uses civilians as human shields. So telling Sinwar we would terminate humanitarian assistance if you do not do 1, 2, 3 would not work. And also, the U.S. is very much concerned about securing legitimacy for the war at the international arena, and thinks that this is going to be a little bit problematic. And there's also some differences between Israel and the United States on the day after, but I think we could discuss it later.
Right. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. And I'll just say to our audience, please write questions into the chat at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those questions later. Okay, so we've talked about some of the differences in the general sort of execution of the war. But what would you say? How would you define America's strategic interest in this war beyond just its support for Israel?
Yes, the American interest in the war has not changed. President Biden has said several times, this is not just a war limited to Gaza, to Israel and Gaza. It has many regional and international repercussions. So the first interest is to show what an alliance is. Israel is considered one of the most important U.S. allies, obviously in the Middle East, but also in the world. And friends and enemies alike watching how the United States is helping Israel. This is number one. Number two, the interest of the United States is to eliminate Hamas, because Hamas has always been a force against war, against peace. It has always supported war. It never supported the Oslo peace process. Always carried out terrorist attacks, and it is connected with Iran. This connection with Iran is important because if Hamas would survive, then it would be considered a major victory for Iran that is threatening Arab countries, allies of the United States, Israel. And there is also a more general global context, and that is the connection between Iran, Russia, and China. Iran, Russia, China, even Iran. Iran signed in February 2021 a major agreement with Iran. It is economic as well as strategic and military. And so this is the evil axis facing or confronting the U.S. axis, which includes Israel, but Arab allies of the United States. And so the test here is also for American ability to maintain Western as well as regional interests. We also know that the Hamas's atrocities carried out on October 7th were connected with Iranians' attempt to subvert the normalization, the pending normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and so the implications are bilateral with Israel, regional, and global.
So, I mean, Israel and the United States share a lot of a number of interests, but there seems to be, certainly since President Biden came into office, there has been a difference between Israel and the United States on the issue of Iran, at least in terms of how to prevent it. We can, if we assume that, if we take the Americans at their word that they also would like to prevent Iran going nuclear, there certainly is a difference of opinion in how to go about that. And I'm wondering whether, despite the very welcome response from the Americans in relation to Hamas, and also in terms of deterring Hezbollah, whether the differences over Iran nevertheless point to continued tension between the Biden administration and the Israeli government.
I certainly hope that Biden administration has drawn the proper lessons from Hamas's atrocities of the Obama administration, Trump, as well as Biden, failed in stopping Iran's nuclear weapons program. They attempted to do it by rewards. The 2015 nuclear agreement, by exiting the agreement. This is what Trump did, and Biden attempted to resume negotiations with Iran in a very strange way. It all failed, and obviously it failed because, I think, of American misreading of Iran's conduct, behavior, lying and cheating, and subverting and undermining all attempts by Europe and the United States. So I think that Europe still believes that negotiations with Iran could produce a reasonable nuclear agreement. I don't think so. I think the United States should know now that the only way to deal with Iran is by force, because Iran are using proxies, her proxies in the Middle East, from Hezbollah in Lebanon. Then you have the pro-Iranian militias in Iran and Syria, which have been attacking United States bases and forces, like almost 60 attacks so far, with very little American military reprisals, all the way to the Houthis in Yemen that have been launching missiles and drones toward Israel, and also attacking Israeli supposedly owned ships in the Red Sea. So it seems to me that it should be clear to the United States, and this is not only what Israel is telling the United States. All American Arab allies, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf Emirates, are telling the United States that Iran is the source of terrorism, violence, instability in the entire region. And I think it's about time to deal with the head of the snake, rather than trying to accommodating, negotiating. The United States is a little bit worried about using force, another use of force in the Middle East. President Biden withdrew from Afghanistan in a bad way. It seems that the American public would not support any serious military engagement with Iran. But I think this is why defeating Hamas, eliminating Hamas is crucial for also sending a message to Iran that they are not going to be successful in messing up Middle Eastern American allies.
Right. Yeah, that's obviously very critical for us. One of the big stories, if not the big story in Israel over the last 2 or 3 days, is the release of some of the hostages. And the United States, of course, has played a major role in those negotiations. Can you speak to that? Can you tell us something about the American role in that?
Yes, the United States shares that interest as well with Israel. Israel from the beginning said that it has two major strategic goals. One is to liquidate Hamas, and the second one is to free the hostages. Sometimes the two go hand in hand. Sometimes they contradict each other, but obviously, suddenly, Sinwar sought negotiations over hostages only because of Israeli military pressure. So the United States has been heavily involved in getting the negotiations and the agreements to free hostages. They divided the work, so to speak, with Qatar and Egypt. Qatar and Egypt were assigned to apply pressure on Hamas. The United States said it would apply pressure on Israel, and this is how they divided the work. But I should say that this is asymmetric type of negotiation because Qatar, even in Egypt, but certainly Qatar is not an honest broker. Qatar has been funding and helping Hamas build that enormous military infrastructure in Gaza. And so Qatar is representing Hamas as much as serving as an honest broker. And I think that Egypt has been playing a much more significant role. But obviously, Biden himself is involved and is representing Israeli interests, helping Israel to secure the number and the category of hostages, women and children. One has to understand it is outrageous for Hamas to hold babies and women and children and old people. I don't think it has ever happened. It shows the cruelty of Hamas. And this is not enough emphasized and not enough dealt with in the international media. But I think that the U.S. assistance is important, and it's also important for the next phase, because at one point of time, Israel will have to resume the full-scale war against Hamas. Hamas is trying right now, these days, to extend the humanitarian pause as much as possible. It wants to convert the humanitarian pause into a permanent ceasefire. And this is something that Israel will have to coordinate with the United States. Once all the women and the children are released, Israel will have to resume the full-scale war against Hamas, especially in the southern part of Gaza, more specifically at the Khan Yunis area, because this is where Sinwar and his chief commanders are at. And I hope that that Israel can do it, say, in a few more days, like 4 or 5 more days. I don't think that Israel could extend that humanitarian pause beyond the total of, say, 10 days.
Wow. Before I get to the next question, I'm afraid your image has disappeared again. Your picture's disappeared agaid.
Okay, let me see what I can do with that.
I think last time you just moved. It seemed to reappear when you moved it, but we'll see.
I have no idea why
Yeah.
it is happening, but let me see if I can do something about it.
Okay.
Just 1 second. May have to do with
if there's no image, then we will just hear your wise words without
this. I
without
don't
seeing
mind, but let me see if I've done something. Let me see.
Yeah,
How
you're
about
back.
now?
You are back. Yes.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see, because I'm playing here. I did not expect to use my phone for this. This is
Yeah, we had a problem. Yeah, we had the audience should know we had a problem with the professor's computer beforehand. So,
but my picture is okay now.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Because I don't see the picture, so I have no idea.
Take my word for it. So thank you for that answer. I'll ask one more question, then I'll get to some questions from the audience. One thing we haven't discussed is how domestic American politics plays into this, because we see that there's a lot of dissension in the ranks. There are a lot of members of the Democratic caucus, especially on the left of the party, the so-called squad and others, who are very much against Biden's strong support for Israel, and that extends also, I think, to younger voters on the left. And we see in the polls that Biden is now slipping behind Trump with the election a year away. So I guess a sort of two-part question. One is whether you think that his support for Israel could actually have an effect ultimately in the 2024 elections, and two, whether if it continues like this, whether it might lead him to move away from his support for Israel because of his domestic political concerns.
So yes, I think that the political polarization, both in the United States and Israel, not helping the war and in general American-Israeli relations. Right now, there is a major challenge to American special aid, military aid to Israel. President Biden submitted to Congress a package deal, including substantial military aid to Ukraine, to Israel, $14.3 billion, for Taiwan, and for some improvements in the border with Mexico. And Biden is insisting on getting congressional approval for the whole package. The House of Representatives, under Republican control, separated the package. They voted for the aid to Israel and transferred the issue to the Senate. Usually, when there are differences between the Senate and the House of Representatives, they form a committee to discuss the differences and to come up with an agreed solution. But because of the polarization and because of the presidential elections that have already started, it became very difficult. There is not much time. There are only 3 weeks before the Christmas recess. Biden said that the Senate would not approve just aid to Israel. He also said that he would veto such a deal. He wants the package deal as such to be approved. So we see how the polarization and the elections are damaging this military aid to Israel. This aid is crucial because much of it, if not most of it, goes to American military industry to produce or to supply Israel with munition and military equipment for the war. Israel has been receiving weapons that it had not had for a long time. New type of weapons, precision kind of weapons. So I think that this is problematic. I hope that Netanyahu would contact his Republican allies in Congress and tell them that they have somehow to reduce their opposition to the aid to Israel. This is what Biden expected of Netanyahu to do. So far, it has not worked, and I hope that this aid will be approved in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, yes, we certainly hope so. All right, I'm going to turn now to some questions that have come from our audience. There was a question from Leon who asked about Hezbollah and specifically whether the US would be interested or see it as an interest to act to remove Hezbollah, or maybe help Israel to remove Hezbollah in the same way as we are looking now to remove Hamas, because of the threat that Hezbollah poses to Israel and the threat it poses broadly to Middle East stability.
Yes. So first of all, the United States was telling Hezbollah and Iran not to intervene in the war. President Biden used the phrase "don't," right. And he backed up his statements by sending an aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean, and another one to the Arab-Persian Gulf, and with other forces. And this was the initial intention was to prevent the expansion of the war, referring to the potential opening of a second front in the north. At that point, Israel was not interested in a full-scale war with Hezbollah. It wanted to focus only on Gaza, but there were some debates in Israel whether or not this is a smart idea. Hezbollah has been firing on a daily basis against Israeli citizens as well as military positions. This is what we call low-intensity warfare. And the United States was concerned about intensive, higher intensity warfare. So the debate in Israel ended with a decision to focus just on Gaza. Obviously, the Hezbollah threat is similar to the one that Israel has faced Gaza, because it has the Rad-1 commando units deployed in southern Lebanon in flagrant violation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701 that ended the second war in Lebanon. So there are some talk in Israel about going against Hezbollah after liquidating Hamas. Some people say that liquidating Hamas would send a message to Hezbollah not to mess with Israel. And there are some talks about the diplomatic move through United Nations and maybe other nations to move the Rad-1 forces deployed in South Lebanon beyond the Litani River to the north. So far, Hezbollah has threatened Israel, but used the force it has been using was minimal. I think that the Israeli military response was quite intensive. And I think that if American deterrence failed and Hezbollah, under instructions from Iran, would expand the war somehow, United States will intervene in certain ways. It could easily intercept drones and missiles and rockets, and even destroy the places from where they are launched, because just to maintain its credibility So I think the U.S. deterrence on this issue is quite intensive. But if Israel decides to go against Hezbollah after achieving the goal in Gaza, this may create some kind of disagreement with the United States.
Okay. There's a question here about going back to the hostage question from Jacqueline, who she suggests that that Hamas will drag out the hostage release as long as possible and keep this process going of adding another day and then another 10 people until, she says, until the only hostages left are soldiers, are IDF soldiers, and then Israel at some point will resume the war. And she asked whether might be a problem with the US going along with this, that maybe the US will at this point there'll be so much international pressure or public pressure from within America that America will actually object to Israel going back into full hostilities in Gaza.
So point number one is that this is exactly Hamas's strategy. Sinwar thinks that he could survive the war and still control Gaza. And so he's saying it, Hamas's leaders abroad are saying it, and it's very clear that the United States and Israel agree. They understand that this is Hamas's strategy, and the two countries have to deal with it. So first of all, there is agreement between the United States and Israel to complete the initial phase of releasing the hostages, women and children. And after that, I think that if Israel would lose its patience and decide to resume a full-scale war against Hamas, I think the United States would not stop it. Yeah. And I think it's important because I don't know about the international community. And I hear all kinds of nonsense from people who are saying, yes, we agree that Hamas should be removed from Gaza, but we also think that a permanent ceasefire should be established. And yeah, I wonder, this is a contradiction in terms, and those who make these kind of statements don't even understand what they are saying, what is the outcome of what they are saying. But I think that as long as the United States and Israel agree that Hamas has to be removed, and as long as Hamas believes it could survive, then a full-scale war has to be resumed. Yeah. And I think the time for it would be after completion of that phase of releasing all the women and children.
Okay. So question here about Iran, and specifically, this is from Shmuel, who asked about the impact on the Israel-US relationship of the growing relations between Iran and Russia. And obviously we see that in Syria in particular, of course, but more broadly, I guess. And he further asks whether the United States may try to develop relations with Iran, perhaps to counter that, or if that's something that Israel needs to worry about, that is that the United States could actually try and have a closer relationship or a better relationship with Iran at Israel's expense.
I don't think that I have not heard any thinking on that potential strategy vis-a-vis Iran. I think that Iran's alliance with Russia, the supply of Iranian weapons, and also the Russian supply of weapons back to Iran, so Russia and Iran and China have a common goal. And that common goal is to limit U.S. influence in the international arena. They would like to evict the United States from the Middle East. This is what they want to achieve. I cannot see how any negotiation with Iran. Biden offered Iran so many incentives, so many concessions during those stupid negotiations in Vienna over the nuclear deal, and still Iran refused to accept those concessions. I cannot see any additional concessions that the United States may offer Iran. I think that Iran has been aligning with Russia and China, not to gain more concessions from the United States. They joined the Russia-China alliance because they fit with their dictatorships and autocracies and common goal of limiting not only the American but also the Western influence in the world. It's like a new Cold War between Russia, China, Iran, North Korea against the West. And so I cannot see, and it would be very stupid for the United States to try to bring Iran to extricate Iran from the Russian orbit. I think the alliance between Iran and Russia is pretty strong. I don't see any reasons Iran would withdraw from that alliance. I don't see any concessions the United States can offer in return for an Iranian withdrawal from the Russia-China alliance.
Okay. I have a question. We're swinging to in between topics here a little, but there's a question here from Linda Levine, which I think is actually a question that probably a lot of people would be thinking about, especially Americans who care about Israel, is what do you think Israel's relations will be with the Democratic Party post-Biden?
Okay, so what we see in the Democratic Party, we see some tension between those who call themselves progressives. I don't think they are progressives. They are regressives. Anybody who supports Hamas, and I'm making a distinction between Hamas and the Palestinians. You can support the Palestinians, but when you say that you support Hamas, then you are not progressive. And so there are the group the squad that you mentioned earlier. They are very hostile to Israel. Some of them are anti-Semitic. They are a lost case. I think that Biden is handling okay. They made a few threats, or some of them made a few threats, to vote for him, which is very strange. The Muslims, especially in places like Michigan. In Michigan, there are 150,000 Muslims. In the last elections, Biden won Michigan by 150,000 votes. So the Muslims are telling Biden, if you do not stop your support for Israel, we are not going to vote for you, and you're going to lose Michigan and other places. I believe this is an empty threat, because if they don't vote for Biden, there's a chance for a Republican, could be Trump. And if Trump is reelected, then he said not even a single Palestinian would be admitted to the United States. And everyone who would support Hamas, I'm going to expel him from the United States. So given this choice, I think these kind of threats are problematic. So I also see some splits inside the progressive branch of the Democratic Party. Some of them have been truly shocked by Hamas's atrocities. They are less critical of Israel. They are critical of Hamas. And the more extreme part of the progressives, I think that AIPAC is mobilizing resources to defeat some of them, and the only way to do it would be to defeat them in democratic primaries, because they represent those who are progressives in the House of Representatives, come from heavily democratic districts. So the chance would be to defeat them in democratic primaries, and I think that this would require careful planning. AIPAC will have to calculate where it could work and where it would not work, and how to achieve this goal. But I think that those who really were extremely anti-Israel, then they should be isolated and maybe defeated next elections. And what Israel also has to do is to strengthen those in Congress that support Israel. There are many Democrats who support Israel, and increase that rift between the anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli members of the House and the other Democrats. Still, most of the Democrats belong to the mainstream of the party and are supporting Israel. The minority belong to the progressive branch.
Right. There's a question here from Graham, which alludes to something that you mentioned right at the beginning when you talked about the day after the war and the potential for disagreement between Israel and the United States on what that would look like, what Gaza would look like, who's in charge. And Graham suggests, will it be the Palestinian Authority? Will it be Israel? Will it be some other combination of states? So how does the US see it, and how does that differ from what Israel sees?
The United States has said that it wants the Palestinian Authority to restore governing of Gaza, which was the case until 2006, 2007, when Hamas kicked out the Palestinian Authority from Gaza by force. And Biden used he used the phrase reintegrated, changed the Palestinian Authority.
Right.
Never explained what that meant. Right. And then every time they speak about the war, they also talk about going back to the two-state for two people solution. And Israel says that first of all we have to remove Hamas. So this is not a good time to talk about the future of a replacement, and Israel does not deal at all with the two-state solution. I think that I would say, I've written about it, I would say that I would not reject the Palestinian Authority, although I don't see much differences between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. They have the same goals. They differ on use of terrorism. But I think that of all the options that are being circulated, this one may be the least bad or the least worse. But Israel should suggest conditions. Like I have a long list of conditions, and then obviously they would reject those conditions, and the ball would be in their court. And I don't know what the United States is going to do in this case. There's one thing I want to emphasize. I think the Biden administration is mixing or is mistaken in assuming that the Egyptian model of peace after the Yom Kippur War of 1973 would apply to Gaza. The model says that after Yom Kippur, both Israel and Egypt got hurt and opted for peace. I think that there's a huge difference between the situation there and now. And if anybody thinks that this could happen after the complete failure of Gaza as a model for peacemaking, the two states for two people solution is like a vision that will have to wait a few more years until the Palestinians prove that they really want peace with Israel.
Yeah, I actually, as it happens, I actually wrote something to myself very recently in which I made the point that if the people calling for two states now think that the Israelis are going to be persuaded to withdraw from the West Bank after Hamas, after Hamas came out of Gaza and did what they did on October 7th, then they're living in some sort of fantasy. Yeah, so let me just go back to we're nearly at the end, but I want to sort of get your view on this, which is that going back to American politics, and we talked a little bit about the Democratic Party, but obviously the election is coming in a year, and it looks like, barring something unusual, that it will be Trump as the Republican nominee. Do you get a sense that the Israeli leadership, I mean, obviously, who knows who the Israeli government will be then, but let's say it's something similar to what we have now. Do you think they would sort of be hoping for a return to Trump, given that Trump was, so seen as so supportive of Israel, pro-Israel in all kinds of ways, and moving the embassy and pulling out of the Iran deal, and was in sync with Netanyahu in all kinds of ways, or to put a devil's advocate, that there might be some concern that because he's so unpredictable, that maybe it's better to stick with Biden, who at least we know that on a personal level, at least he has a deep support for Israel and a strong affinity with Israel.
We are very good in analyzing the past, very mediocre in understanding the present, and very poor in predicting the future. 1 year from now in the Middle East is like 10 years elsewhere.
Okay.
So it's very difficult to say, but obviously Israel should be concerned if Trump were to win. The problem would be that he is inclined to support the axis of evil, Russia, China, Iran. And Biden does exactly the opposite. So his global view it could be problematic. I think that I don't know if I assume that after the war there would be another government in Israel. And I don't know. I don't think that Netanyahu is going to be able to continue after that spectacular failure on October 7th. So even if the war succeeds and Hamas is destroyed, so different Israeli governments. I don't know about President Trump's second term. Trump from the beginning of this this war, somehow he praised Hezbollah. He criticized Netanyahu. He still has that complaint about Netanyahu, why he called Biden and congratulated him on winning the elections. He thought that Netanyahu should have not done that. And also he's a little bit angry at Netanyahu for undermining his spectacular peace plan of 2020. And here is, as you said, very unpredictable, very problematic, especially in foreign affairs. He wants the United States to get out from the world. America first means some kind of splendid isolation. So no, I don't think there are certain things in United States-Israel relations that are going to continue.
the Republicans obviously are much more supportive of Israel than the Democrats.
Right.
All kinds of surveys have shown that. But Trump, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And I think that that if he were to win, there could be some differences between the United States and Israel on regional issues.
Like a more mainstream Republican, like a Nikki Haley, would probably be preferable, right, in that regard.
Yes, but the question is whether the United States is ready to accept a women president. This is something that, and Trump is unlikely to select her as a candidate for vice president, but I'm quite impressed by her rise to the second place among Republican contenders, and I wish her much luck.
Right. Let me ask this. We haven't touched on this at all. One of the ways in which the relationship with the United States is so different from the relationship with any other country, of course, is the presence of the largest by far Jewish diaspora community in the United States. In the United States, can you speak to that and how the war, in your view, has changed attitudes of American Jewry towards Israel, and maybe also touch on the rise in anti-Semitism as well?
Yes, this is still ongoing, so it's hard to tell where it will be moving. But the American Jewry has been shocked, both by Hamas's atrocities as well as by the waves of anti-Semitism in the United States that rose by 1,000% from the day of atrocities. They have seen American universities refraining from condemning Hamas, from allowing pro-Palestinian Muslim violence on campus, intimidation, and especially of Jewish students and Jewish faculty. So it seems that perhaps after several years of tension between Israeli government and American Jewry, attributed to Netanyahu as well as to internal divisions inside American Jewry, and as well as in the Democratic Party, because many Jews in the United States, 70% of the Jews are Democrats, are liberals. Some of them are very anti-Israel, very anti-Zionist. I've been shocked to hear an organization, ugly organization, terrible organization like Jewish Voice for Peace on campus praising Hamas. What kind of Jews they are? And if not now, another terrible Jewish organization, anti-Zionist. You don't want to support Israel, fine, but you support Hamas, and you consider yourself liberal and progressive, you are garbage. And maybe it's about time that American Jewry begins to understand who is the enemy and how to fight that enemy in the United States. And the demonstration in Washington last week, many people praised that demonstration. I was not that enthusiastic about it. I think that American Jews should have demonstrated in Washington much earlier and bring to Washington 1 million people, not 250,000 or 300,000, because this is an issue. It's not just support for Israel. It's anti-Semitism, worst anti-Semitism in American history that was underground all the time. We have seen that all the time. But American Jewish organizations and the American Jewish left completely ignored anti-Semitism of the left. For them, anti-Semitism exists only with the American right. Yeah. And maybe this is the time for them to wake up and take actions to minimize, reduce the poisonous influence, especially on young Jews, young people on campuses across the United States.
Thank you. I did hear a smart suggestion that JVP should, rather than being Jewish Voices for Peace, should be interpreted as Jewish Voices for Pogroms.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So I think we will finish there, and I want to thank you very much, Professor Gilboa, for joining us. I apologize for the technical problems, and to everyone. For almost the entire lecture we were able to see your face. There were a couple of moments where you slipped out, but we got to hear your very wise and informative and instructive words. So I thank you very much for joining us and for enlightening us. I want to tell the audience we will be having a bit of a break from this series because of Hanukkah. We'll be back with this series with the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security in about a month. But next week we have a different Zoom where we'll actually be dealing with one of the topics that we just discussed, which is the anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism on American and British and other campuses. So that'll be next week. So look out for that on our website or Facebook page. Email me at paulg@begincenter.org.il. I just put that in the chat. If you want to join the mailing list, you can email me for that. So thank you, everyone. I hope those of you in Israel are staying safe and at least feeling some of the, I know it's a slim pickings at the moment, but some of the good news that is coming in of our hostages returning and seeing some of those amazing pictures of families being reunited. Yes, I thank everyone and hopefully see you again soon. And thank you again to Professor Eytan Gilboa. Bye.
Thank you.